Hey, Copper Canyon Algebra 2, welcome back. So we're still on 9.4. I have one more example to show you. So 9.4, evaluating 6 trig functions. This is example 3. So what you might notice or have noticed already is that there are some examples in Edgenuity that don't give you fraction trig functions. So, you know, they don't give you nice numbers like 4 or 4/5 or something like that. They give you decimals, like this one. If sine theta is negative 0.3846. Now that's tricky because how are you supposed to identify the denominator or the numerator if it's already been calculated to some sort of decimal? That makes it challenging. So there is a solution for it. So we have something called Pythagorean Identities. I have all 3 of them written out here. And they're called Pythagorean Identities because they're all based off of the Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. You'll notice that every single one of these has squares on the trig functions, and there's definitely like a floating 1 somewhere there. Now the thing you have to pay attention to is you're going to use each one of those based on what they give you. So my problem here is giving me a sine value. It's giving me an answer for the sine function. So because it's giving me the sine value, I've got to use the Pythagorean theorem identity that has the sine function. So that's going to be this one. So I'm going to be using this one to help me calculate the rest of what I need here. Okay? But if they gave you like a tangent, if they gave you a tangent decimal in the problem, well, then you'd be using this Pythagorean identity right here because they're giving you a tangent. If they gave you cosecant, this is the one that has cosecant in it, right here, the bottom one. So based on what they're giving you, that's really just telling you, hey, use this one, use that one, or they use this one. So pay attention to what they're giving you. There's only one option to go with. There's not overlap, so you just got to pay attention to what they're giving you. So since they're giving me the sine value here, I'm definitely going to be using this Pythagorean theorem here. So here we go. Let me get it set up. Now you will definitely need your calculator, preferably decimals, just because I don't want to square decimals or add or subtract long decimal numbers. So we're definitely going to pop over to decimals here after a little while. But let's do setup. Let's talk about angles and sines and that kind of thing as well. So just like on the last video we talked about, you remember, you've got to watch out for those angle restrictions. They're telling you what quadrant this particular angle is taking place in. That's important because we have different quadrants with different signage, right? So this one is telling you that the angle you're looking for is between 3 pi over 2 and 2 pi. Okay, so if you've got to get back out your unit circle just to remind you where those are at. So here's your thing right here. Here's 3 pi over 2 right here. And so going back to all the way to 2 pi, so 2 pi's here. This is the 4th quadrant. Main thing here is take a look at the signage of all the points here. In the 4th quadrant right here, all of your x values, aka your cosine values, they're positive, but your sine values are negative. Okay, so you got to keep in mind there. Also, take a look. If you have a positive x value and a negative y value, look at your tangents. All your tangents are going to come out negative as well. So this is important because it's really telling you the sign, or the sign of all the ones that you're going to be getting. All right, so this is quadrant 3. And I'm just going to put sine, which is your, well, maybe I should put cosine first. So your cosine is positive, your sine is negative, but your tangent will also be positive divided by negative, negative. So you really do know your signage there now that you know what quadrant is in. Keep that in mind as we do our workouts here. All right, so going back to the Pythagorean theorem or the Pythagorean identity. So the only thing I know about this is the sine part. So I'm just going to replace this. I know that all of this right here is this decimal. So I'm just going to replace it out. Now use parentheses, especially since we have a negative here. Negative 0.3846. There's a square on that, so you're going to put a square. I don't know that, so I'm just going to put plus. Now, I don't like writing the trig functions out, so I'm just going to replace it. I know that cosine is the x value, so I'm just going to write x squared rather than writing all of this because I just don't like to write all that stuff. So I'm just going to put x squared. It's a variable. It's fine. And 1. Okay? Now, so here I just plugged in what I knew. I knew the sine value, plugged it in, put a square on it. I don't know the cosine value, but I know that cosine is really just x, so I just made it simple on myself and put an x there. Now, before I go to my calculator or to decimals, I'd like to get this set up more. Right now, this is not set up to solve for x, okay? So I actually want to move this over to that side, so the x squared is by itself. So I want to move all this off to the side. So this is going to end up being x squared equals, and if I were to move this to the other side, now remember you're changing signs here, so I have the 1, but I'm subtracting all of this. Oops, decimal. And it still has the square on it. Why did I do that? Because remember, we want to make sure that this stays together and that we want everything to one side. This is perfect for going to your calculator or to decimals and just typing all that in. Don't forget the parentheses and don't forget the square, okay? All right, Algebra 2, so we're going to go ahead and use Desmos to type in the values for the Pythagorean identity. So we're going to start off with 1 minus. Make sure you put parentheses before you type in your negative sign value. So it was negative 0.3846. I'm going to close that off. And then let's go ahead and put in our square value. So we got our square. And so we got this crazy decimal here. So we're going to keep it 4 decimal places. So let's come down here and go ahead and type in square root now. Because remember, we got to square root everything. So we got 0. Oh, sorry, too many zeros. 0.852. Now here's the thing. We're going to go ahead and round it to 4 decimal places because we want to make sure this is as accurate as possible. So this is 0. But looking at the number behind the 0, this is 8. So we're going to actually round the 0 up to a 1. So let's go and type 1 down here. And so you can see we got the 0.92309. So again, when we go back to the board here, we're going to round this 4 decimal places again. So we got 0.923, and our answer is actually going to be a 1. So we're going to go ahead and round this to 1. Okay? So that's what we're going to take to the board. So that would be our new cosine value. Alrighty? All right, so we went to Desmos and calculated our x value. So we should have got this. X squared gave, when we typed all that, we got x squared, we got this. But then we square rooted it on Desmos, right? And this was the actual number we came out with. Now, let's answer the question that they gave us, okay? Because we haven't actually answered the question yet. So the question was, once they gave you that information, find cosine and tangent. So remember, cosine is your x value. So technically, we just found that right here. Now, I'm going to go ahead and write it out. Cosine theta equals, now, I know that this is the number that I got, the decimal I got, and that's the right answer. But remember about our quadrants. We are in quadrant 3, so remember the signage. Cosine is positive there. So this one is going to go ahead and stay positive. So that is my answer for cosine, but now I got to answer the tangent part, which I haven't done yet, but that shouldn't be too bad now that I have that value. So tangent, okay, remember, tangent theta is just dividing your y by your x. Now I know that these are decimals, but decimals shouldn't be that bad, especially now that we know exactly what they are. So our y value was our sine value, so this is our sine. Negative 0.3846, and we got to divide that decimal by our new x value, which was this one right here. Okay, again, same thing, go to a calculator, go to Desmos, pretty simple, but you are doing this decimal divided by that decimal, and that's going to get you your tangent answer. So tangent theta, and let's see, I got negative 0.4166. Okay, so we got our cosine, we got our tangent, and we use the Pythagorean identity to get it. Alrighty? I hope that helps Algebra 2. You shouldn't have too many of these Pythagorean identity questions, but you might run into 2 or 3. So good luck. And as always, if you have questions, feel free to set up a tutoring time with me on one of the tutorial days.